You know that moment when your past comes back to slap you in the face. Well, mine happened at First National Bank on a Tuesday morning, and it changed everything. I'm Jenna, 28, former systems engineer turned, well, let's just say I keep a low profile these days. I walked into that marble floored lobby with one simple mission withdraw $75 from my elderly landlady, Mrs. Chen. Her payment system was down, rent was due, and she needed cash for groceries. $75. That's it. The teller was processing my request when I heard that voice. That perfectly polished, condescending voice I hadn't heard in 4 years. Jenna, still broke and bold. Huh. I turned around, and there she was. Camille Rodriguez, my former college roommate, standing there in a designer blazer with a nameplate that read, Branch Manager. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. The entire lobby went quiet. You know that awkward silence when everyone pretends they're not listening, but absolutely are. Yeah, that one. A businessman lowered his newspaper. The security guard shifted uncomfortably. Even the teller stopped typing. Camille stepped closer, her heels clicking against the marble like a countdown timer. What's it been 4 years? And you're still... What's scraping together cab fare? I could have said something. Could have explained. Could have defended myself. But here's what I've learned about truly powerful moments. Sometimes silence hits harder than any comeback ever could. I took my $75, folded it carefully, and walked toward the exit. But just before I reached those glass doors, I turned back. Our eyes met across that pristine lobby, and I gave her something I'd been saving for years. A smile. Not angry, not hurt. Just knowing. Because here's the thing about assumptions. They're usually dead wrong. And Camille was about to learn that the hard way. 20 minutes later, I was back in my one-bedroom apartment, staring at my old ThinkPad. Yeah, it looks like something from 2015, but appearances can be deceiving. Trust me on that. I opened the laptop and logged into a system most people have never heard of, Obsidian Nest. Clean interface, no flashy graphics, just numbers and data that would make Wall Street executives lose sleep. My phone buzzed. A text from Mia, my business partner, and probably the only person who truly gets me, saw the news about First National expanding. You sure you want to do this? I typed back slowly. It's not revenge. It's a reset. But to understand why I was about to turn Camille's world upside down, you need to know our history. And it's not pretty. 4 years ago, Camille and I were inseparable. We had this brilliant idea in our senior year at Northwestern, a fintech platform that would democratize investment for college students. We called it Pennywise. Nights in the computer lab surviving on energy drinks and dreams, building something that could actually change lives. The prototype was flawless. The pitch deck was killer. We had meetings lined up with 3 major investors. Then Camille got cold feet. Or so I thought. 2 weeks before our big presentation, she came to me with tears in her eyes. Jenna, I can't do this anymore. The pressure, the risk, my parents think I'm crazy. She wanted out of our partnership. I was devastated, but I respected her choice. Signed over her shares, took on all the debt, wished her well. 6 months later, I found out the truth. Camille hadn't gotten cold feet. She'd gotten greedy. She sold our entire concept to TechFlow Capital for $200,000. My algorithms, my user interface, my 3 years of research. All of it. The worst part, she'd been negotiating behind my back for months. Those cold feet were just her way of cutting me out cleanly. Pennywise launched without me. It failed spectacularly within a year because Camille never understood the technical foundation. But that didn't matter. The damage was done. My reputation in fintech was destroyed before it even began. So I disappeared. Moved to this quiet neighborhood, told everyone I was done with technology. Let people think I'd given up. But here's what Camille never knew. I didn't give up. I rebuilt. And I built something she could never steal, because she could never understand it. Obsidian Nest isn't just an investment fund. It's a decentralized wealth management system that I developed with my former professor, Dr. Sarah Kim. We've been quietly managing assets for high net worth individuals who value privacy over publicity. $4 million in assets under management, zero public profile, complete autonomy. And guess which bank First National Bank uses for their institutional partnerships? My fingers hovered over the keyboard as Mia's message flashed again. Whatever you're planning, just remember who you really are. She was right. I knew exactly who I was. And it was time Camille found out too. 3 days later, I made a phone call that would change everything. First National Bank. How may I direct your call? I'd like to schedule a meeting with your institutional services department. This is regarding Obsidian Nest Holdings. The pause on the other end told me everything. In banking, certain names carry weight. Obsidian Nest was one of them. Of course, ma'am. May I ask the nature of your business? Asset management review. We're considering restructuring our $4 million partnership. Friday morning, 10 a.m. sharp. I walked back into that same marble lobby, but this time everything was different. I wore a simple black suit, nothing flashy, nothing that screamed money. The real power move isn't showing off wealth. It's controlling it quietly. The receptionist's computer screen lit up the moment I gave my name. I watched her eyes widen slightly as she read whatever appeared on her monitor. Security clearance levels, account flags, VIP protocols. All automated, all instant. Ms. Rodriguez will be right with you, she said. Her tone completely transformed from 3 days ago. I sat in the waiting area checking my phone casually when I heard those familiar heels clicking across the marble. Camille appeared around the corner, but her confident stride faltered the moment she saw me. Her face went through about 5 different expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, disbelief, and then something that looked suspiciously like panic. Jenna, her voice cracked slightly. What are you doing here? I stood up slowly, smoothing down my jacket. I'm here on behalf of our institutional fund. I let that sink in for exactly 3 seconds. We have $4 million at stake. The color drained from her face. I could practically see the mental calculations happening behind her eyes. 4 million. Institutional fund. The same woman she'd mocked for needing $75. I'm sorry, I don't understand, she stammered, but her hands were already shaking slightly. Obsidian Nest Holdings, I said simply. I believe you handle our account. That's when it hit her. I could see the exact moment she connected the dots. Her biggest client, the one that kept her branch profitable, the mysterious fund that never requested face-to-face meetings. You're, she whispered, the founder and managing partner, yes. I tilted my head slightly. Is there somewhere private we can talk? This concerns the future of our partnership. Camille's professional mask was crumbling in real time. She gestured weakly toward her office, but I could see her mind racing. How was this possible? How had broke desperate Jenna become the person who essentially paid her salary? As we walked toward her office, I caught the receptionist staring. The security guard was paying attention now, too. Word travels fast in banks, especially when a major client's identity is suddenly revealed. After you, I said, politely gesturing to her office door. Camille fumbled with her keycard twice before getting it to work. Her hands were definitely shaking now. Because here's the thing about assumptions. They don't just embarrass you when you're wrong. Sometimes they destroy you completely. And we were just getting started. Inside her office, Camille closed the door and turned to face me. Her composure was hanging by a thread. Jenna, I can explain about the other day. I was having a rough morning. I didn't mean to. I'm not here about the other day, I interrupted calmly. I'm here about our account. I sat down across from her desk and pulled out my phone. I need to initiate a full withdrawal, $4,200,000, transferred to our secondary institution. The silence was deafening. Camille's face went completely white. I'm sorry, what... You heard me correctly, and I'll need to freeze our institutional partnership pending a comprehensive audit of your branch's client relations practices. I started typing on my phone, accessing the Obsidian Nest Management portal. This shouldn't take more than a few minutes to process. Wait, Camille's voice cracked. You can't just. There are procedures, protocols. A withdrawal of that size requires executive authorization, which I have, 48 hours notice, which I'm waiving as the account holder, and a valid reason, which I'm classifying as loss of institutional confidence. My finger hovered over the submit button. Unless you'd like to discuss why I should reconsider. That's when something broke inside her. The professional mask, the arrogance, the superiority complex. All of it crumbled at once. Please, she whispered. Please don't do this. But I was already submitting the request. My phone buzzed with confirmations, transfer authorized, partnership status under review, account flagged for immediate closure. Somewhere in the building, alarms were going off. Not literal alarms, but the kind that make regional managers panic and district supervisors start making phone calls. A $4 million client doesn't just disappear without consequences. Camille's office phone rang, then rang again. She ignored it, staring at me in horror. This will destroy my branch, she said quietly. My numbers, my performance metrics, everything. I looked at her for a long moment. 4 years ago, you destroyed something too. Something I'd built with my own hands, my own ideas, my own future. That was different. That was business I finished. Yeah, that's what you told yourself, wasn't it? That it was just business when you sold my life's work for $200,000. The phone kept ringing. Through the glass walls of her office, I could see other employees starting to notice something was wrong. Hushed conversations, worried glances toward us. And then, something happened that I never expected. Camille stood up from her chair, walked around her desk, and dropped to her knees in front of me. Please, she said, her voice breaking completely. Please, don't do this. Not like this. I have a son. I have a mortgage. This job is everything I have. For a moment, I felt something twist in my chest. This wasn't the confident, mocking woman from 3 days ago. This was someone terrified, desperate, realizing that actions have consequences. I was young, she continued, tears starting to fall. I was scared and stupid, and I made a terrible mistake. But destroying my life won't bring back what you lost. I looked down at her, kneeling on the expensive carpet of her corner office, and felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Not satisfaction, not revenge, just sadness. For both of us. You're right, I said quietly. It won't bring back what I lost, but maybe it'll help you understand what losing everything actually feels like. My phone buzzed with a final confirmation. Transfer complete. Partnership terminated. Account closed. It was done. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived at my apartment, handwritten on my mother's familiar cream-colored stationery. Jenna, I heard about what happened at the bank. I also heard about Northwestern's alumni event next month. They're honoring Camille for her contributions to local business development. I know you two had your differences, but I think you should go. Show everyone how well you're doing now. I'm sorry I never understood what you were building back then. I'm sorry I always called Camille the ideal daughter I wished I had. That was wrong of me. Love, Mom. I read that letter 3 times. My mother had never apologized for anything in her life. The Northwestern alumni event was exactly what you'd expect. Expensive venue, overpriced wine, middle-aged professionals trying to relive their glory days. I arrived late, slipping in through the back entrance while the keynote speaker was wrapping up. And now we're honored to present this year's Young Entrepreneur Excellence Award to someone who truly embodies the Northwestern spirit of innovation and leadership. I found a seat in the back row just as Camille walked onto the stage. She looked polished, confident, like the woman I'd known in college before everything went wrong. The audience applauded enthusiastically. Camille Rodriguez has transformed the banking industry in our region through her visionary approach to client relations and her groundbreaking work in fintech development. Fintech development. My stomach clenched. Her early innovations in student investment platforms have influenced countless young entrepreneurs across the Midwest. I pulled out my phone and opened a folder I'd created years ago, but never touched. Screenshots, emails, voice recordings, evidence I'd collected during the legal battle that never happened because I couldn't afford a lawyer. As Camille accepted her award and began her acceptance speech, I quietly made my way to the head table where the event organizers were sitting. "Excuse me," I whispered to the woman with the clipboard. "I have some additional materials about tonight's honoree that I think the committee should see." She looked annoyed until I handed her a manila folder. "These are the original development documents for the fintech platform Ms. Rodriguez is being recognized for. I think there's been a misunderstanding about the actual innovator." The woman opened the folder and her expression changed immediately. Email chains between Camille and TechFlow Capital. Voice recordings from our partnership meetings, most damning of all the original code repository, with my name as the sole contributor, time-stamped months before Camille claimed to have developed the concept. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Jenna Mitchell, the actual developer." On stage, Camille was talking about the importance of ethical business practices and supporting fellow entrepreneurs. The irony was suffocating. "These documents," the woman said, flipping through page after page, "they show that she stole everything," I finished quietly. "The algorithms, the user interface, the entire business model. She sold it all while I was sleeping in the computer lab working on improvements." The woman's face had gone pale. She gestured frantically to someone else at the table, then another person. Within minutes, 3 committee members were huddled around the folder, whispering urgently. On stage, Camille was reaching the climax of her speech. "Success isn't just about having great ideas. It's about having the courage to pursue them even when others doubt you." That's when the event coordinator approached the podium and whispered something in the microphone technician's ear. The man looked confused, then concerned, then started reaching for the power switch. But I was faster. I stood up from my seat in the back and spoke, my voice carrying clearly across the silent room. "You're absolutely right, Camille. It does take courage to pursue great ideas. It takes even more courage to pursue them when someone you trust has already stolen them." Every head in the room turned toward me. Camille's face went from confusion to recognition to absolute terror in the span of 3 seconds. "I'm Jenna Mitchell." I continued walking slowly toward the front of the room. "And I'm the real developer of the fintech platform you're being honored for tonight." The room was so quiet, you could hear people breathing. Camille stood frozen at the podium, the award still clutched in her hands, looking like she'd seen a ghost. I reached the front of the room and turned to face the audience. 200 of Chicago's most influential business leaders, all staring at me with a mixture of curiosity and confusion. "I'm not here to cause a scene," I said calmly. "I'm here to set the record straight." The event coordinator frantically gestured to someone in the back, but I pulled out a small remote from my pocket, the kind that connects to any projection system. "May I asked, pointing to the screen behind Camille. Before anyone could object, I clicked the button. A single slide appeared on the massive screen. Simple, white background, black text, one sentence: "You can't erase what I've built, just because you weren't ready." That's it. No elaborate presentation, no angry accusations, no dramatic revelations. Just 11 words that said everything that needed to be said. The audience was completely silent. Some of them were looking at the screen, others at Camille, whose face had gone from pale to gray. "This," I said, gesturing to the slide, "was the last thing I told Camille 4 years ago when she said she wanted out of our partnership. What I didn't know then was that she'd already found a buyer for our work. What I learned later was that you can steal someone's code, their algorithms, their 3 years of research, but you can't steal their ability to rebuild." I clicked off the presentation and looked directly at Camille. The fintech platform you're being honored for tonight, the one that failed 6 months after launch because the technical foundation was never properly understood, that was mine. All of it. And I have 4 years of documentation to prove it. Murmurs started rippling through the crowd. I could see people pulling out their phones, probably Googling my name, looking up Obsidian Nest, trying to piece together what they were witnessing. The event coordinator finally found her voice. Ms. Mitchell, if you have concerns about intellectual property, this isn't the appropriate venue. Actually, interrupted a voice from the audience. Dr. Sarah Kim, my former professor and business partner, stood up from her seat in the middle section. I think this is exactly the appropriate venue. When someone receives recognition for work they didn't do, the truth should be heard by everyone present. She walked toward the front of the room, carrying her own folder of documents. I supervised the original Pennywise project, she continued. I watched Jenna code for 18-hour stretches, developing algorithms that were genuinely revolutionary. I also watched Camille contribute primarily to marketing materials and presentation slides. The atmosphere in the room was shifting. What had started as confusion was becoming something else. Realization, understanding, and for some people, outrage. Camille finally found her voice. This is a misunderstanding. Jenna and I were partners. We developed the platform together. I smiled sadly. No, Camille. You developed the pitch deck. I developed everything else. That's when my phone buzzed. A text from Mia. Chicago Business Journal is running the story online right now. Former fintech founder reclaims IP. Silent no more. It's trending on LinkedIn. The committee members were huddled together, whispering urgently. The head of the Alumni Association approached the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to need to suspend this evening's program while we investigate these claims. But it was too late. The damage was done. Not just to Camille, but to the entire event, the university's reputation, everyone who had endorsed her nomination. Camille slowly set the award down on the podium and stepped away from the microphone. She looked at me one more time, and I saw something I'd never seen in her eyes before. Not anger, not defiance, just defeat. The crowd was already dispersing, people pulling out phones, making calls, sending messages. Tomorrow morning, this story would be everywhere. And finally, after 4 years of silence, everyone would know the truth. I turned and walked toward the exit, leaving the chaos behind me. I'd said what I came to say. The rest was up to the world to decide. That night, I found myself walking through the old neighborhood near campus. My feet seemed to know where they were going before my mind did. There it was. 1247 Maple Street. The tiny 2-bedroom apartment Camille and I had shared during our senior year. The place where Pennywise was born, where we'd stayed up until 3 a.m. debugging code and dreaming about changing the world. The building looked exactly the same. Same chipped paint on the front door, same crooked mailboxes, same fire escape we used to sit on when we needed to think. I sat down on the front steps and pulled something out of my bag that I hadn't looked at in years. My old startup notebook, the one with big ideas written on the cover in my terrible handwriting. I flipped through pages of sketches, code snippets, business models. And there, on page 37 in the margin next to a wireframe of our original user interface, was a note I'd written to myself. Build things, they can't steal your integrity. I'd forgotten about that line, written it during one of our late-night sessions when Camille was worried about competition, about other startups beating us to market. I'd been trying to reassure her that what we were building was bigger than just the code. Funny how prophetic that turned out to be. My phone buzzed, a text from Dr. Kim. Saw the news coverage. Proud of you for finally speaking up. Coffee tomorrow. Then another from Mia. 3 reporters want interviews. Also, I have a proposal for you. And one more from a number I didn't recognize. Is this Jenna Mitchell? We'd like to discuss funding opportunities for your next venture. I smiled and closed the notebook. 4 years ago, I'd lost everything I thought mattered. My startup, my partnership, my future in tech. But sitting there on those familiar steps, I realized I hadn't lost anything that actually mattered. I'd kept my integrity, I'd kept my skills, I'd kept the ability to rebuild, and I'd built something even better than what was stolen from me. The next morning, I walked into my new office space. The sign on the door read, Echo Nest Funding Future Female Builders. The office was small but bright, with windows overlooking the lake and space for 6 desks. Mia was already there, hanging up a whiteboard covered in project timelines and funding targets. Ready to change the world? She asked, grinning. I looked around at our little space, at the future we were about to build, at the young women entrepreneurs we were going to support. Yeah, I said, but this time we're doing it right. Because here's what I learned: revenge isn't about destroying someone else's life. It's about building something so much better than what you lost that the theft becomes irrelevant. Camille took my first startup, but she could never take what mattered most. She could never take the builder. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be defeated. Sometimes it's showing the world who you really are when you thought no one was watching. And sometimes it's just walking away from the past and building something beautiful from the ashes. That's exactly what I did. What do you think about Jenna's choice? Was it justice or was it too far? Have you ever had someone steal credit for your work? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story of quiet strength and unexpected comebacks, hit that subscribe button for more real-life drama that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. Sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming everything they said you couldn't be. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.